They tell you war is bullets and steel, but the scariest weapon I ever met was a word. Winter 1944. Somewhere between the Ardennes woods and a half-burned Belgian village, our unit was running a quiet job. Signals and deception. No glory, no medals, just static, code books, and men too tired to blink. My name is Daniel Dan Mercer. I was a staff sergeant attached to a small intelligence team supporting the U.S. Army. We had one rule: never speak in the clear. Not your name, not your unit, not your hometown, not a single habit the enemy could recognize. Because the Germans weren't just listening, they were hunting. That night, the air was sharp enough to cut your lungs. Our radio operator, Private Eddie Mason, crouched under a soaked poncho beside the SCR 300 set. His hands shook, not from fear, from exhaustion. He hadn't slept in 2 days. None of us had. Eddie whispered, "Ready to transmit." Lieutenant Harris leaned in. "Authentication first. You get it wrong, you don't talk." Eddie flipped the damp code sheet, lips moving silently as he found the day's challenge and response. The radio hissed like a snake in the dark. He pressed the handset. "This is Bluebird, requesting..." Lieutenant Harris's head snapped like a trap. "Bluebird," he mouthed. No sound, just disbelief. Because Bluebird wasn't today's call sign. Bluebird was the old call sign we used weeks ago, before we changed everything after a code compromise. A dead word, a buried word, the kind you never repeat. Eddie froze, eyes wide. He realized what he'd done at the exact same time I did. Somewhere out there in the Black Woods, a German signals team was recording every syllable. And if they still had the old intercept logs, if they still remembered that word, then Eddie hadn't just spoken, he had lit a flare over our heads. Lieutenant Harris hissed, "Cut, cut." Eddie released the switch like it burned him. The hiss returned, louder now, like the world holding its breath. Nobody yelled, nobody moved. In war, the worst moments don't explode. They go quiet. Harris stared at Eddie like he'd been stabbed. "Why would you say that?" Eddie swallowed. I didn't mean, I just..." He couldn't finish. His mouth worked, searching for a lie that could save him. I stepped in. "We relocate. Now. 2 minutes. Burn the trash." That's when we heard it. Not gunfire, not shouting. A faint engine, rolling slow. Harris's eyes met mine. "You think they got us?" "I think," I said, "they just started looking in the right direction." We moved like ghosts, deeper into the trees, leaving footprints we tried to erase with pine branches. Eddie carried the radio set like a coffin. He kept glancing back like he expected the darkness to grab him by the collar. 15 minutes later, we reached a ruined stone shed, half collapsed, roof torn away. We stopped only long enough to listen. And then it came. A thin, distant whine like metal cutting air, followed by the hard crack of impact somewhere behind us. Another, then another. Not close enough to kill us, close enough to tell us the same message. They're walking the shells toward you. Lieutenant Harris cursed under his breath. "They're ranging. They know we're here." Eddie looked sick. I swear I didn't." Harris grabbed Eddie by the collar, pulling him close. "One word wrong. That's all it takes. You understand what you did?" Eddie's eyes filled, but he didn't cry. He just nodded like a man already sentenced. I pried Harris off. "If you want to hang him, do it after we're alive." Another impact, closer now. Dirt and snow shook from branches. We sprinted. We cut through a shallow ditch, then across a field that used to be farmland. A broken farmhouse silhouette rose ahead, black against a gray sky. If we could get inside, we could hide from shrapnel and maybe break line of sight. We made it to the farmhouse wall, breathing like animals, when the world behind us flashed and popped again. A concussion, a shower of dirt. Someone shouted, "Down!" No blood, no screaming, but one of our men, Corporal Reed, didn't stand up right away. He held his arm tight, face white with pain. Eddie saw it, and his face collapsed. He didn't say, "I'm sorry." Men don't say that when the word sorry is too small. Inside the farmhouse, the air smelled of wet wood and old smoke. Eddie set the radio down with hands that looked like someone else's. Lieutenant Harris leaned over him, voice low and vicious. "If we die tonight, Mason, it's on you." Eddie stared at the radio. "Then let me fix it." Silence.
"What do you mean?" I asked. Eddie swallowed hard. "They're not just listening. They're direction finding. They'll be triangulating the source. If I transmit again from somewhere else, loud, long, then we can pull them away, give them a better target." Harris laughed once, sharp. "So you want to play hero now?" Eddie shook his head. "No, I want to pay." I looked at him. In the dim light, he didn't look like a kid anymore. He looked like a man who found out the price of 1 second. "Where?" I asked. Eddie glanced through a broken window toward the village ruins. "The old church tower," he said. "It's higher, better signal, and it's far enough to pull them." It was also the most obvious place to die. Lieutenant Harris opened his mouth to refuse. Then another shell hit close enough to rattle the farmhouse. The decision made itself. Harris pointed a finger at Eddie. "You go, you transmit exactly what I tell you, and you cut out. We move the second you start." Eddie nodded. We strapped the radio back onto him. The SCR 300 was heavy, awkward, metal and wire and battery, like carrying your own gravestone. We moved through the village like shadows, burned carts, shattered windows, a child's wooden toy in the mud. Everything civilian turned into debris. At the church, the tower leaned slightly, wounded but standing. Eddie climbed the narrow stone steps, each footstep echoing. I followed halfway up, just enough to watch him set the antenna and connect the handset. His hands were steadier now, not because he was calm, because he'd accepted something. He looked down at me. "Sergeant, tell Reed I didn't mean to." I couldn't promise forgiveness, so I promised truth. "I will," I said. "Now, transmit." Eddie inhaled, pressed the switch, and spoke into the darkness. "This is Bluebird. Bluebird, requesting immediate—" He paused for half a heartbeat. Then he continued, louder, longer, clean and clear like a flare in the night. Behind me, down on the street, our team started moving, fast, using the moment to disappear. Eddie kept talking, not because the message mattered, because the signal mattered. Outside, I heard it, the distant engine again, closer now, and the faint metallic clatter of equipment, direction finders rolling, operators tuning, men pointing. Eddie's voice stayed steady. "One wrong word marked us," he said into the radio, still staying within the mission phrasing, still sounding like a trained operator, even as his life counted down. A flash lit the village from beyond, then another. The first shell hit the churchyard. Stone dust jumped. The tower groaned. I was already running down the steps when the second hit closer, shaking the entire building like a fist. Eddie didn't scream. He didn't beg. He stayed on the air. And then silence. The radio hiss cut off mid-breath. I turned once, just once, and saw the tower wreathed in smoke and drifting dust, the silhouette still standing for a heartbeat, then shedding pieces into the night.
We didn't stop. We couldn't. Hours later, in a new tree line miles away, we regrouped. Reed was alive, shaken but alive. The shells had followed Eddie's signal, not our trail. The Germans found a tower and a dead frequency. Lieutenant Harris never apologized. Men like him rarely do. But he took Eddie's dog tag from my hand and held it for a long moment, jaw tight, eyes far away. Years after the war, a file crossed my desk, declassified intercept notes from a German signals unit. I read the line that made my stomach drop. Bluebird identified, same operator signature as prior weeks, marked for immediate action. Eddie hadn't been a traitor. He'd been tired. And then when it mattered, he chose to become the target so the rest of us wouldn't. That's what war does. It doesn't just kill men. It makes a single word heavier than a life.